I want to talk about actually Passover real quick, just because I feel like it just ended. But Passover is a very special thing, very special lessons I want to quickly go by. And I think that not just Jews, but Christians and Muslims can relate to this just because Moses, right? This has a lot to do with Moses. Moses is involved in their religions as well, and they follow Moses' teachings as well. What's very interesting about Passover, and we learned this back in January for some reason, uh, Moses has a speech impediment, had a speech impediment, and he was like 80 years old. And God came down and said, you're the guy to lead the Jews out of Egypt. And he's like, are you serious right now? Because I'm 80 years old and I have a speech impediment. I think you have the wrong guy. He says, you're the guy. And, that just shows that you don't have, it doesn't matter what your disability is or what, people always have this excuse like, I'm not good enough to do something, right? Or I don't have what it takes. But here you have a guy who's old with a speech impediment, and he was chosen to be the leader to do this. Now, of course, he had help, right? Teamwork. His brother Aaron, he did a lot.
He had a Scottie Pippen.
He had a Scottie Pippen, right? He was the Michael Jordan. He had a Scottie Pippen, and there's no I in team, right? So then another thing is, and then in the Bible, when they talk about Moses' parents, they just say a man and a woman. Now, the importance of that is, why don't they say something interesting about, and again, what I love about all these teachings is because they all correlate to our life today. You know what I mean? So why not talk about his parents, right? Because he was so great. Why not talk about how great his parents were? All they say is a man and a woman, because they don't want you to know how great or not great they were. The point is that it doesn't matter, and you can be great either way without that. And I think the way that correlates to today's life is we look at somebody who's rich or has more, entitlement, like, they come from a rich family or a family full of connections, so they have the advantage. And then we're like, oh, it's not fair. They have all these connections. So, we don't have those connections. That's why they can be, successful and we can't. And I think what this teaches, it doesn't matter. It could be them. It could be you. Without the connections, without the money, you can still be great. That's the point. Mm-hmm. Okay. Another thing is, like, for instance, they were saying something about, if God wants you to start counting the stars in the sky, then you got to do it, right? And you're thinking, well, that's impossible. How am I going to count all the stars in the sky, right? But it doesn't matter. You just start. You just start and you do it anyway. And I feel like, again, that's the same thing. So when I first started my movie in 2008, Blind Thoughts, I had a guy with a camera and I had a script. And people told me, how are you going to do this? You don't have money. You don't have, anything. I'm like, look, all I know is I have a script and I have a guy with a camera and we're going to just do it.
There's the will, there's the way.
There's the will, there's the way. And, this really happens every day because people talk about, oh, I don't have what it takes. I don't have the tools. I don't know how to even start. And it doesn't matter. Just start.
Yeah, just
and
do
everything
it.
will work itself out. You know what I'm saying? So...
yeah, there's no one way of doing something, like, people start shit. They don't know what they're doing necessarily.
Absolutely, man. You got to just start it, man. Who cares, And look, Blind Thoughts was a shitty movie, right? But it was a stepping stone. It was a stepping stone for everything else I was doing. Without Blind Thoughts, I don't know if I'd be where I am today. And again, I'm not necessarily like there yet. But, you got to look at the cup half full. A buddy of mine told me, you did make it if you think about it, right? Because you're doing all these great things. We're having meetings about it. Maybe you don't have the paycheck that you want necessarily just yet, but you're living the dream and you're enjoying what you're doing. And it's true.
And I think that what you meant by that also was that it's basically your own school and your own training.
Absolutely. I didn't even go to film school.
So you had to go through that to understand, to see things a lot differently and better now. And and now you could set up the framework for the future. And that's very important. That's why when people like say they have all these ideas and stuff like this, it's like, they don't know where to begin. Just do a Google search, right? And you don't know what can come up. I discovered the craziest shit that I thought, like, wow, I can't believe I just figured this shit out. And I could have like used this months ago, and maybe I would have been, in a better place right now. But it's just like, it's amazing what we have right now at our fingertips.
Absolutely, happens all the time. Absolutely, you know.
It's funny. That story of God telling Moses, an 80-year-old guy, and he's saying, "Are you out of your mind?" Like, I always picture that being a very funny,
Like
happening in a funny
me?
way.
You want me to be the guy? Are you
Yeah.
sure?
And with his speech impediment, he's like, Me,
yeah, absolutely.
like stuttering.
But that's amazing, isn't it? Because if he can do something so great like that, that means anybody's capable of anything. Of course, we have our limitations, right? Like if I want to be a professional, well, I'm 34 years old, right? I didn't even have what it takes probably when I was a teenager to be in the NBA, let's say, right? But I'm 34 years old. Fine, maybe I can't be but we have to use our weaknesses as our strengths. So if I want to be involved with the NBA, I could be involved in different ways, let's say.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then another thing that we learned that day, I remember, is that God told the Jews that were leaving Egypt, I want you to wear nice things and feel great about yourself, because he wanted them to get out of that slave mentality. And the way we could correlate this to today is that I had like that mentality, for instance, like I'm not good enough, right? Why me? Like with an audition or with my content, why me? Why am I good enough? I'm not good enough. I don't believe in myself. But you have to believe in yourself. You have to get out of that slave mentality.
Exactly.
And that's what he wanted them to do. That's why he wanted them to look and feel luxurious, not to continue that, oh, I'm just a slave. And it's funny because shout out to Game of Thrones and spoiler alert, but when Daenerys conquered a city or country and she freed the slaves, yeah, there was tension between the slaves and the slave owners. But one of the slaves one day came back to Daenerys and said, my queen, I have a favor to ask, which she's like, what do you want? What do you need? And he asks, can I please be a slave again? She's like, why? I freed you. Why would you want to be a slave again? He's like, because I don't know what to do with myself. I really don't know what to do with myself. I had shelter and I had, it's, what do you call that syndrome? Stockholm syndrome, is it? It's like where like you're almost appreciative of being a slave and you're appreciative of your slave master because you had it wasn't so bad. And now that you're free, it's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to sleep. I don't have shelter. I don't have food. It's almost, well, is that called Stockholm Syndrome?
I think so.
It's something like that. Let me see real quick.
It sounds very fitting.
Yeah. Well,
because you're stuck home.
I don't think that's why they call it that.
It's called after some guy.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Stockholm Syndrome. Feelings of trust or affection felt in many cases of kidnapping or hostage-taking by a victim toward a captor. Yeah, that's exactly it. So Stockholm Syndrome. And to finish with the whole Passover story is that a lot of Jews didn't even want to leave Egypt because they felt comfortable being slaves. They're like, oh, we're comfortable here. We're afraid to leave Egypt. We don't know. So, a lot of them stayed. How much percent stayed back?
I think 80%.
80% stayed back? It was that much?
Actually,
I know it was like a huge chunk.
Sure.
I think only maybe 38% of Jews left.
38,
or 38 stayed behind, or 38% left, one or the other. I think
maybe like 33.6.
I think 38% left. But the point is that today, to correlate this to today, we're all living in our personal Egypts that we have to escape, and we're too comfortable, right? If you're in a toxic, cancerous relationship or a career that's killing you, and you don't want to leave, right? This is a way you could correlate to biblical times, that you have to leave. It's uncomfortable. You feel, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? But when there's a will, there's a way. Everything will work itself out. And there were a lot of success stories. This is why I like talking about these things now, about me especially, because I'm not one of those celebrity success stories just yet. So I want people listening to be like, yo, I'm on the same boat as you. So if you have the power and you have the strength to continue going, then why can't I?